Hello.
Hello.
I did hear that Emma cannot join us, so we just have a couple folks still coming on.
There we go. Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We have anybody else on?
Yes, Lisa and Peter are here.
Yeah, review. There we
Hi,
go.
Jeb.
Hey,
Okay, there you go. And Emma's not able to join us. Her flight was delayed, so I don't know if you saw that email. So we were just waiting for Jeff.
sounds good. There we go. And
All right. Do we just get started and then Jeff can join us as needed?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, we can do
Great.
that. All right, so this is the Public Market Advisory Commission meeting. It's Thursday, December 19th, and it's 5:32. Roll call. Oh, Stephanie. There you
Yes.
go.
Sorry, I was juggling my mute button for a second. Commissioner Bogue,
here,
Commissioner Wolf,
Here.
Commissioner Young,
Here.
and Assistant Manager Bradshaw, although you don't have to say here, but I see that you are here. So hello. And not Jeff yet.
All right. So item C, approval of the agenda. You all should have a copy of the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes, modifications, things you'd like to make for that? Or the only thing that I had that I wanted to roll in was last time we talked about putting in discussion about the market mobility person. So I'd like to include that in the agenda for today also.
Yes, and I figured that might be easiest just to do in the new business, so I wouldn't have
That's
to
fine.
like
That's
send
fine.
six other
Gotcha.
emails to
So
people. So
just a preview to all those people out in TV land.
yes.
Okay, so
Sure.
given that, is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Excellent. Item D, first public commentary, limited to agenda items only.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to join? I'm not currently seeing any.
All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to the item E, approval of the minutes from previous meetings. Should have those copies of those minutes too. Any changes, additions, modifications? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Raise your hand. There we go. Passes unanimously. All right. Item G, regular business.
All right. So, similar format as in meetings past, where I will be talking about a few things. The first thing that I have in terms of general updates, our event season has largely ended. Although it's not our event, I know Kindle Fest was very successful at the market this year. I've heard from vendors, including some of our hot sauce vendors, from Jeb as well, that it was a very fruitful market. Hannah was also there representing the market and helping park events run the whole thing. So that was really fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. And that's also great news for us, because I know that it had been sort of rocky over the last couple of years, and they finally kind of got it back to what I've been told was pre-pandemic levels. And with that said as well, for our events, we have started conversations about what our events calendar will be like for 2025. So if anyone has any things that they would love to see, that is wonderful. We are in the process of applying again for our food safety grant. So, the thing we were just talking about yesterday, excuse me, is, do we want our cooking demos to look the same? Do we want to have a different makeup? We had talked about maybe adding a canning or otherwise food preservation element to it this time around. But we've just started our conversations about events for next year. We also have great news that the library wants to come back, and they want to do something that is very exciting, that maybe, Hannah, you can say the official title of it if you so choose.
It's a working title for it, but it would be bringing the puppets that they feature during story time to the market for more interaction. Sorry, there's a dog chewing a bone behind me. And yeah,
Or a
exciting
puppet
stuff.
petting zoo or some odd thing. Yes. So we're very excited for that to come. And they thought that would be, a fun thing and also easier to pull off than like an actual story time, based on, the transient nature of people coming and going from market, the sounds, not having a microphone, things like that. So we're very, very excited. But beyond that, we don't really have any other events so far, other than, yes, we're most likely probably still doing Flower Day, probably doing the food truck rallies. But we're all ears if you have any other ideas or things that you've heard from people that they may be interested in, expanding things, adding things, all of that good stuff. So I don't know if anyone has any feedback on event.
I heard great things about the cooking demo, and I actually really love the idea of having one of those be like food preservation sort of activity. So that would be really fun, I think, especially when something's really in season, getting people to think about, oh, you could freeze this, or you can make jam, or you could dry it to then, like, I'm eating my frozen asparagus this winter, that sort of delicious thing.
Awesome. And I think we wanted it to be like also canning based, because we figured that was like a really useful skill that not many people have, and wanted to, make sure that is something we include as well.
I would follow with following Lisa's too. I think actually for me, at least in my experience with that too, is freezing is a lot easier for me than canning. And that there are a lot of things that I end up freezing that people are surprised that you can, and that you can get so much of it so quickly that I actually have a dedicated chest freezer for nothing but farmers market produce that ends up in season. I can just mass quantities and then secure it, then throughout the year I can eat it up. So it's just a matter of knowing like what can you do and what can you recover from it that way. So
Definitely. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Great. And that's pretty much what I have. But yes, in process, that's something we're going to be doing this winter, is just finalizing stuff. But the first one will be this cooking demo, because, the grant is due sooner than the others. Great. In terms of vendor updates, we have very, very good news for the vendor application process. we have been waiting with bated breath to announce this, but we worked with the IT team to put together our very first online fillable application. So it's going to be hosted through Cognito Forms that the city IT department helped us put together based on our current application. So I know that's been something that's been a obstacle for many people, including staff, having to print out everything, mail it to everyone, have everyone fill it out, mail it back to us, and then when we get it, having to do that whole thing in reverse. So we've been looking for a couple years ways to sort of navigate around this. And this was a wonderful suggestion that we were given by someone within Parks, that IT could just help us create something that wouldn't have to be a Google product, wouldn't have to be like things like that. So it's something that we're excited about. Of course, we will definitely assist people if they want our help filling it out online, or we will definitely have paper copies still available for people for which the online is a big obstacle. But I think it will help us streamline everything. And we're going to be sending out the link to the application in the next little bit here. By the end of the year, we hope to have that out. And we, of course, will give a big explanation for people about, what that's going to look like, the process. Everyone still has to fill it out by March 1st. So the deadline is still the deadline. You just don't have to. So no notary anymore, of course, and an online form. The one thing that we are trying to navigate, I will say, is that in years past, we were basically handing out like a current application and people are just editing it for us, saying, is this correct? Is this not? At least this first time around, people are going to have to sort of just start from the beginning and do it that way. But there may be a way in the future to have a workaround for that, but that wasn't available as of yet. So, and then for new vendors, this is something that's going to be available on the website instead of them having to download the form, print it out, mail it. And that's the other thing I would say is that previously the vendor application, they were supposed to print it and mail it. But in recent years, it's become more and more people are just like taking a picture of it with their phone and sending us. So it became really difficult to read, and it was just getting really cumbersome in that way too. So we're looking forward to that. But then again, if people need a paper copy, always going to be available. It's just streamlining this. And we've already identified a list of, 5+ vendors that we think we know already out of the gate that will need a paper copy. And, just attacking it from that angle instead. So that is our big, very exciting vendor update that we have. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments so far about that.
That sounds like a really nice addition. I'm just wondering from you guys' end of things, so the applicants put in all their information in the form, and then does that go to the city and then they send it out to you guys?
No, it goes directly to us.
Okay, great.
No, they just helped create the form and then the pathways like within the farmers market at SharePoint. So that will be something that we don't have to navigate through a separate person.
Great.
Yeah. And another really exciting change as well that Hannah has been working a lot on is that we now have the capacity to do our invoicing for vendors through a program called CivicRec, which other parks, facilities, and sites use to do things like, livery rentals or the park shelter rental. It's the same program they use to do that, but we're going to be handling it through vendors now, which means we'll be able to edit invoices ourselves without having to go, having to go through, multi-person arduous process of trying to figure out, has this been sent? All those things will be going away. And people will be able to reliably pay online now. Before, some people could do it, some people could not. It was just a really big question mark as to why this was such a big barrier to people. But that is something that is really fantastic. And Hannah has been in the process of entering vendors into the system. So in essence, each vendor is going to have their own like unique profile where we'll be able to bill them from that. The other really great feature on it is we can send things with that with the invoice, like here's another copy of the rules, or hey, remember what the vendor handbook says. And it's an easier way too to keep reminding people as well about deadlines and all other things that making sure everyone's compliant with the market rules. So that's another really, really big change that's been in the works for a while. And we finally, are moving on that. So remember, and that's for the invoices that will be due June 30th. So we still have a little bit of time, but it is coming.
And not a big change in terms of like vendors have to get used to another software. It's just like pretty much internal. We can change the invoices now. So not a scary new thing to learn, just now people can pay online and we can change the amount.
Yes. All those things. Cool. Anyone have any other thoughts on that feedback?
No, that's great news.
Wonderful. Great. And then the other one, which is related, I guess we might as well fold it in. We also worked with IT to have another way to sign up for telling us that you're coming to market, because we have been using just a Google spreadsheet this whole time, where it can be confusing because people accidentally like put in another page, or they can't find their name, or all these things. So we've tried to simplify that and just have something that goes out per week that someone can just say, are you attending? And you just reply yes or no, and then give some more information there. And then same thing, it will be aggregated for us into a spreadsheet that we can see. And we haven't done a rollout on that yet because that just became available within the last couple of weeks, and we wanted to make sure this season was completed, and it's a stressful time before we do this big introduction of all these things. But that's another thing that will be helpful, hopefully.
That sounds great. Farmers market entering the 21st century. So exciting.
Well, we've been there, at least in the sign-in process, but I don't know about the rest.
Sort of related, Stephanie, as you were mentioned, I think last meeting, that there was a problem with the reimbursement for the vendors that had tokens. Seems like that's somewhat another IT issue. I might be wrong, but I was just wondering if there was any movement on that.
That is not an IT issue. That is actually a mail issue. Because there's been a lot of checks that people just have not been receiving, and these are people that have their checks mailed that have been disrupted, and we found out that it is because of it. No one knows. It was supposed to have been issued. We don't know where these things went. They're being reissued. So it is being taken care of. But yes, it was actually a snail mail issue, not an email or IT. But we're working on it, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last thing, we continue to have new applicants, of course. And I just went through a big stack of the most recent applicants, because we take applications on a rolling basis. And we did accept a brand new to us pasta company, which right now the only pasta that we have at the market is White Lotus, which is a great product, but it's very different than the type that this person will be offering. It's probably more similar to what Mama Mucci had in the past, which is more of like the different flavors of a long noodle type, sort of, we'll call it fettuccine, although I don't think it actually is called that by the producer. But that is somebody that we decided, was really good for our product mix, filled in a gap of a vendor that we had in the past, but didn't anymore. So that was sort of I think they were the one that rose to the top. I think there was a bunch of other ones that, did not for various reasons. But I think pretty sure I'm just trying to double check that as I'm saying it. But I think, yes, that is one I can confirm for you has been accepted. I have not yet heard back from them to move forward with their orientation and everything. But again, it's holiday time, it's winter, so it might be a bit. But we thought that was a good fit for our gaps. And again, remember, we already had the 3 new people that I spoke about before. So this would be 1, 2, 3, about 5 new people in the last couple months total have been accepted. Don't know if anyone has any feedback on that.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
The new vendor renewal program that'll be online, is that something available to people who are just applying for the first time? Do you expect there might be an uptick in applications? And how do you think that might, is that all going to work together?
It's going to be the same thing. The main difference is that the ones that are returning vendors are going to go to like one location, and the news are going to go to a separate location.
Makes sense.
They were asking us if we wanted to put it on the main website or just our website, and we're like, you know what? I think it does not need to be on the parks website. It's going to be on the market website. That would sort of, filter out slightly. But who knows if it gets to be that we have far too high of a volume, maybe we can think of doing like a minimal application charge or something, like no more than $10. I'm not willing doing the exorbitant ones that some of the shows have charged, that will remain nameless. But Jeb knows exactly what I'm talking about. So maybe if we need to cross that bridge, maybe that's a way that we can address it by having just like a low fee barrier to entry, so that it would stop people that aren't really that serious. Because a lot of times I get messages off of the Instagram, like, I want to apply. And you're like, well, they're asking questions like they've clearly never been to the market. They don't really know much about what we're doing. They didn't even click on our bio to find the website. Like there's steps that weren't taken. But I think that is a great question, because we don't want to be completely inundated, but it will be going to 2 different locations, at least.
I see it as just sort of reducing the amount of weirdly scanned photo of paper we get. Because it is still like a long application to fill out. It's a little bit shorter than 10 pages of paper, but there's still a lot you have to do to apply. So hopefully it won't be too crazy, just everyone applying all at once. Hopefully it'll just make it more readable for everyone, especially on the back end. I'm very excited to not scan thousands and thousands of pieces of paper. That's really exciting for me.
And not fill all the same envelopes on the front end too. And yeah. And the good thing too about this, I guess I forgot to mention, is that we have fine-tuned it as well. So if someone's an artisan, they're only going to get the artisan questions. If someone is a farmer, they're only going to get the farmer questions. So not everyone's not going to have to wade through all of the extraneous pages if it's something that does not apply to them. So that's another thing that was really helpful with IT that we worked through. If you click producer, it sends you on one path. If you click artisan, it sends you on a different path. And if you have multiple properties, same thing. And there's also places to upload licenses, and all of the extra add-on leases and everything that people will need now that they can just upload that directly with their application as well. Yes, I know it sounds scary, but it's going to be one. No, it doesn't. But yes, we were just excited at the reduce, because also like on the other side, it reduces vendors having to go to the post office, pay a bunch of postage as well, because again, it's a 10+ page application, and all that stuff. So great question.
It arrives, because if you've already had issues with snail mail, then it's like, did you get my application?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Any last comments, questions about that piece? Cool. All right. So for staff trainings, I mentioned before that I am doing the racial equity cohort for Michigan Farmers Market Association. We also did the year-end food access meeting. Lunia will be going through the Michigan Farmers Market Manager Certification Program this coming year. It's going to be in January, so it's coming up soon. She is going to be going to Alpena for the weekend, so it's going to be an in-person session in the beginning and then virtual for the rest of the session. So we're really excited for Lunia to be doing that, because then all of us will have gone through that certification. It's a great resource for learning. It's also a great resource for networking and meeting other market managers. So we're really excited that she is doing that. The city, of course, or excuse me, I mean the market specifically, and the city is funding her ability to do that, like they have done with us. So we're excited about that. Another training that I attended, well, training / listening session that I attended was earlier this week. They were doing focus groups about what they are calling electronic solution of Senior Project Fresh, which, if you remember what happened to WIC and going into a digital format, the same thing will be happening to Senior Project Fresh this year coming up. There are some key changes, but we had a long conversation about that. And, it's not necessarily looking that good from the early vantage point. They did not seem to really have a contingency for how we're going to encourage farmers to apply, especially after the really poorly done rollout of the WIC produce connections, where we went from 55 vendors participating down to 0, down to 1 who wasn't able to actually do any transactions by the end of the program this year. So it's hard, but it's something that we know more about now, and we're going to probably have to do a lot of legwork ourselves again to try and help farmers sign up for it, to also probably help seniors to sign up for it. So it's going to be quite an undertaking, but they have been at least involving us in the process slightly earlier than WIC had last year, but still a lot of concerns coming out of many areas for this upcoming program. So, but that's all I have for staff training for at least right now. So, do you have any questions or comments?
I was just wondering if Hannah could fill us in a little bit about the food access meeting training that she did, just really briefly.
We did talk about it last meeting, but go ahead, Hannah.
You said that everybody was going, but I didn't.
Yeah, we all went. It was the same meeting. Just updates from WIC Produce Connections, the network, and then the beginnings of the Senior Project Fresh conversation. Still concerns about WIC and WIC Senior Project Fresh for next year. I think all the market managers fairly dissatisfied with what has happened to those two programs. I don't think WIC Produce Connections, the statistic I'm remembering is that there were 950 plus vendors across the state of Michigan in the previous year, and there were around 50 maybe this year across the whole state. We went from $8,000 a year about in food assistance with that program to 0. So that was the experience of most farmers markets. So hopefully those things could be addressed in the future, but not super encouraging meeting. Double Up Food Bucks, though, great. Everyone's doing great with Double Up Food Bucks, and I think their numbers are increasing, higher reimbursement at farmers markets. That's what I'm remembering off the top of my head. Sorry, that seems like it was a while ago. If you have any questions, you feel free to ask. Hopefully that made sense.
Yes.
That's
And
great. Thanks.
and I was going to say too, they had given us like a sneak preview about the senior thing at that meeting. But these were more like supposed to be focus groups where they were trying to gather information about like what they should or should not do this year. But sadly, it seemed like they were very, very far from the finish line in terms of decision making, in terms of what that program would look like on the ground.
As of right now, it will be with a software that is free to farmers. And then it will use QR code readers instead of swiping or tapping. And the QR codes are supposed to be on people's phones, but they're hoping to get cards for all of it because it is a program for senior citizens specifically. So that access point with the technology there seems to be missing a bit of the link. It should be easier for farmers to use because of you just have to have a smart device with a camera on it to scan someone's QR code rather than a card reader. But you do still need to have reliable wireless. You do still need to be able to scan a QR code. So a lot of questions there, but yeah.
And I would also add that to validate their card, seniors will also have to have an email. So there was a lot of questions coming from the county health departments about what their role would be. Are they going to have to be making emails for people to be able to even just activate the card? Yeah, lots of concerned folks on the call on Tuesday from farmers market side, from the farmer side, and from the what they call the lead agency side. So the county health departments around the state.
Great. Thank you.
But yes, more coming soon when we know it on that, because I'm sure there's many questions. All right. So moving on to facility and repairs. So we have reached the time of year when there are less facilities open. So a lot of our repairs that have been waiting for a very long time have been actually addressed quite rapidly. A lot of this has to do with electrical. So outlets at vendor stalls not working has been sort of the main issue that has been addressed. We were also having a small water leak inside of the office building, utility closet that was addressed very rapidly. We are also about to have some trees taken down next to the old market office. That will be happening either tomorrow or Monday. It's all been on a very fast timeline because they realized this is something that would probably be helpful to have done before the demolition starts in mid to late January is when they sort of told me as of right now is where the timeline sits. So if you're wondering which trees they are, one is the very, very dead maple that is the very tall one at the back side of the office building right next to the shed. And the other is the serviceberry that is also being killed off by the English ivy that is very aggressive back in that area. So sad to see them go, but they were not long for this world anyway. We are certainly not cutting down healthy trees. I guess luckily, no one wants to see that happen, but these trees really need to go out and it will help everything be better later. And part of it too is it came with the conversation that we had yesterday about, where would the new electrical be once the building comes down, and they identified sort of that area behind the shed between those two trees as where the box would need to go. So also making it much more accessible for them to, move our electrical fully out of the building. We're partially out of the building with the IT, with the network system. However, the power source is still in the building. So would be moving, the nerve center, as it were. Because right now, you might have noticed they're running a line from the old office building to a post at our trailer. So in essence, they're just moving where that line will be running from to this new box adjacent to the shed, if that makes sense. So we've been doing a lot of conversations about this stuff in the last few days. And that tree information, that's info that has literally taken shape today. I went out there this morning and I met with the forestry folks and, showed them where exactly we were talking about and all of that stuff. So that is where we are right now for facility and repairs.
I guess following on to that too is when they do take down the old office, will there be an interruption for power for the market, or will that be all contiguous?
The plan is to not have any disruption. That's why they're really trying to get ahead of this and have the box constructed in advance and make sure that is all fully gone. And the good news is the city has also been working currently on a 721 North Main demolition that had a very similar situation of having to move the electrical, having to move the network to a different place before demo. So they have some very recent experience on working on this. So IT is like, oh yeah, I just had a conversation last week. Let me talk back to, check back in with that person to get this started. So, and I should also mention that part of that conversation too was identifying to see if there's anything still in the office building that, needs to be removed. Mostly it's just cleaning products that the janitorial staff left or, paper towels and toilet paper and things that can be brought to other park sites. And then, of course, our historic photos. We're going to have them take the ones that are like really high up by the top windows and the breezeway. They're going to take those out and put them into storage. Other than that, everything cannot really be removed. And that's another thing I found out is that we aren't allowed to salvage anything from the building due to just like city policy in terms of ownership. So that's another thing I found out relatively recently, that most of the things would not be, anything that the city's not taking is not going to be salvaged, basically. Which, is not what we thought would happen, but it is what it is.
Yes, when they take out the trees, it could be an opportunity to take out the ivy too. Get a native to replace that eventually. That would be a good thing.
Yes, that would definitely be preferable and very good. And I think, partly though, they need to maybe wait till the footprint of the building is fixed. But yeah, that's definitely something on my priority list for sure. Because the last thing we want to have happen is, have this happen again to whatever gets replanted there. So, yes. Any other questions or comments about facility and repairs? All right. So yes, if you come to market and the trees are gone, now you'll know why. You won't be surprised. All right. So in terms of letter E, I don't really have too many updates specifically about those two development projects. 330 Detroit is seeming like it's becoming less disruptive by the day to us. They're getting closer and closer to completion of that. 121 Catherine still, is a big hole in the ground. I saw them starting to put pillars in yesterday. So obviously we are far away from completion. But as I mentioned before, we do have an open line of communication now with the developer for that. So if there's going to be, lane disruptions or road closures or whatever, like they're going to work with us on making sure those days do not correspond with market days as much as possible. Or do, a better job on that. So that's what I would say about those ones. I might as well just fold this into the conversation about F because it's all very similar. As we know, Braun Court will be coming down and they will be putting in a 7-story above market value condo situation there. They will also be most likely retrofitting the 303 Detroit Street, so the building right next to our market office, into housing. And that plan entails putting on an extra floor on top. The good news about me poking around and asking questions about those things is I've been put in contact with a lot of people in the city in planning, in engineering, and road closures. So we have a lot more information about impacts, which will hopefully translate into me being able to communicate information quicker to vendors and customers about when there's any disruption. Hopefully that will also translate into similar things that I said before, that, we will make sure that road closures don't disrupt market as much as possible, and that we are aware of these things, that we can maybe encourage them to schedule these things in our slow season, January through April, and like make it work out. And I know that the planning department has now designated our area as a so-called sensitive area, so that people are going to be thinking maybe thinking a second and third time in terms of the impacts that these development projects, as is right now, will be unfolding. And I will say that both of those are still not fully through the design review and approval process, but everything I have heard is that they're going forward. It's just a question of a when, and we're maybe probably looking at 12 months at least in the future on the 303. And I would imagine Broncourt's going to be a little bit sooner, although we don't know the timelines as of yet. So that's what I have about that. If anyone has any other comments or questions.
Like after these are done, there won't be any more lots adjacent to the market. So you're kind of like, you're done.
Let's hope so. Let us hope so. And I'm just glad that now we at least have like a channel to talk to, and because some of the people I had spoken with, they didn't realize that closing the street on 4th had been disruptive. They hadn't heard that. So, knowing that we have recourse and who to call if, a massive cement mixer is blocking the driveway or something like that. We have an actual physical number of a person to call. And we have more information that we need to. All right. That is all that I have for that item. So the next one, good news. Hannah and I both saw Adam in the flesh today at the community services potluck. He will be back in early January, but he's not back quite yet. But I know people have been waiting for him to come back so we could get our conversations going about the steering committee for the new building, for the conversations we're going to have through the community engagement process. And all of that really should get started when he gets back and is able to submit the RFP for all of this stuff. And, hopefully we can start to have community meetings in the summer about, what is coming. And I think I did already talk about some of this, is that we know the timeline's looking at a late January demolition as of right now, based on the timelines of the other projects that need to be demoed first in the, proposal as it stands for the city. And then, moving forward with that. I, again, mentioned a lot of this already, that we did sort of like final walkthroughs of what's staying, what's going, where we have to put things. So we are moving forward in a lot more of a way than we have in a while. So, when things get closer, I think that's when the urgency jumps in, and that's when, people get involved. So that is where we are right now for that upcoming demolition and renovation, remodel, whatever it is. Reconstruction, that's the word I'm looking for. That will be happening later. So I don't know if folks had any questions that you wanted me to bring back to anybody in the planning department or anything like that.
I think whenever we have our next in-person meeting, it would be great to have Adam come and walk us through the process so we can understand all the sequence of things as he envisions it. So
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay. So I guess that brings us to where are we on here? That brings us to new business, which I guess is our placeholder for the Market Mobility Partner Project, or proposal, rather. If you would like to take it away, Peter.
Sure. Should I share my screen?
Sure.
Let's see, where is it?
Are you able to do so?
I'm not sure.
Let me see. Let me see if I can allow you to do it. You should, as a panelist, you are
Giving me
selected as
errors.
having that ability. But if it's not working, let me
Do
see.
you want to do it?
Yeah, one
giving
second.
me
Yep,
errors right now for that. So
no
please
worries.
don't.
No problem. Sorry, my computer's being slow. If you pull that up.
That's true. Since it's on Google Docs, I can highlight things simultaneously because it's all work simultaneous editing.
All right. Well, here we go. And I will get it shared right now.
There we go. All right. So, yeah, this is what I was trying to think through was this market mobility partner project. So one of the things from the last survey that came through, and actually from I don't know, the last decade, the last century, it seems like, there's always been discussion about parking and about people. One of the challenges with a market in general is, it's like the shopping cart and parking lot problem that you want people to buy a lot and do a lot of their shopping here. But one of the challenges, how do they get it that kind of essentially back to their car? And there have been a lot of proposals for ways to do that over the past few years, and none of them have really gained much traction. And as I was trying to think through it, one of the challenges was that we don't really have habitat within the market structure for that to happen. If it were something, there have been proposals of someone having a drop-off zone and then having someone who could run your groceries to your car, or a shuttle, or someone selling bags or carts or things like that that work through. And it kind of fell into this no man's land where maybe the market manager could do it, but the market manager's already got plenty to do. And so that's just a non-starter. So a different way to do it could be, as I was redoing the bylaws originally, that's like looking through those bylaws in more detail, there really isn't a place for this kind of job title. It's not a vendor, it's not a vegetable, it's not an artisan but person, it doesn't fit in any role. So one way that we could do it would be to create a role. And this role would be of essentially one either daily or potentially annual vendor slot. And they might get a special spot that might be one, let's say, near the pull-in area. But that they would be tasked with, or their job would be as a specialized thing to actually go through and provide some of these services. And the nice thing about that is that it kind of moves that organization and that model to someone else who wants to try to create it. And if however they charge for it, whatever processes they do, they can evolve. Like it's kind of, it allows an option for that. But I think, the barrier that I saw before was partially that I couldn't see a way that previously we could allow someone to do that. And that's kind of a problem because we don't have a label for them. So it's a matter of just inventing a label. And so what I proposed with this is making either a modification to the market rules. So again, this is as such, it's a long-term process given all of our experience with these little things take a long time to do. But it would kind of create this new class of this is just placeholders, market mobility partner, that would actually go through and provide these services of, again, managing items for people to help them get them to their car, and or helping to, they could sell things too, like carts and bags. I mean, there have been discussions about that too. And I guess historically there was a period where I think the market actually did have a bag that it sold for some period. That seems to kind of come and go. But having something that was actually more forward with that could be an idea. So I wanted to put this out here as an idea, and I think that it could potentially address some of these things, and particularly as all this construction comes up more too, that parking is just going to get tighter and tighter. And so it's something that if we don't really front on address it, then it's not going to get any better. It's likely just going to get worse. And so if we do have an example, I think there's one in, what is it, Pike's Place in Seattle has a service like this, their market. And so that there are different models for how you can do this and facilitate that process. It's not with many markets, but ours does a little bit more urban. We're not in the center of a giant, vast sea of asphalt, which is great. But also that's kind of one of the perennial concerns that people attending the market have. So what I'm proposing is that we first walk through and try to figure out what, if we want to do this, or if this is something we're interested in, figure out if there's language around that we'd want to adopt, and then do it as a trial program and see if it works. And so there are two things that are unknown. One is what it would look like, exactly how we want to specify it. But two is if we get someone who wants to do it, because you make the habitat. There's no guarantee that anyone will bite. So there's kind of a bit of a give and take there. And if we make it too restrictive, or if it just is like, well, there's no financial model to make that work, then okay, well but if we don't have anything that allows anyone to be there, then no one would ever know to even that that's something a need, or it would be allowed. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg, but it seems like an idea that could allow people to start getting creative and try to figure out ways to help recruit someone else in to really think about that one problem and potentially solve that for the market and make that into a viable business for them too. So that's the idea. I've got more in here of just kind of the timeline, but really at this stage, I think most of it is just getting the idea out there and getting some feedback about what you guys think and pros and cons. Again, it's a proposal, and it may well be it's like it's not going to work, or there's some serious issues, and that may well be. So, or it might be like, oh, if only we did X, Y, or Z. So that's good too. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Peter, for putting this together. I think it's interesting. I think it could solve some of the issues at the market. So I'm wondering for this trial, would it be recruiting somebody new to the market, or seeing if there was a vendor that has a bunch of staff that maybe they designate one of their staff members to sort of develop this idea a little bit? I didn't know if you had any thoughts on how we could operationalize a trial. And that would also solve that might address some of the interest issues, because if it's a vendor now, they can start to think about what their capacity is and if they want to take that on.
Yeah, and I think that would be great because they're already familiar with the market and how that works, and that would be a good thing. I think what I was thinking would be more or less kind of create the structure and create like an RFP, and so that people who can, here's kind of what we're looking for, put that out there, and maybe first put that out to the vendor saying, hey, you guys get first dibs, and maybe write that in the rules too. If you're a vendor who gets existing already within this, then you get priority. That's fine. But trying to get someone who wants to try that and wants to see if they've got a solution. Again, I've heard from a lot of vendors too, when I bounce this idea of like, I heard no one that I've spoken to is like, oh, we don't want this to be easier. But it's a question if someone has the capacity, has the ideas to step up to do that, because it's a lift. It does take some doing. And if it is within the market, that's fantastic. If it's from outside, if no one in the market wants to do it and someone outside wants to do it, or they do a good job, great. So it's a question still. There's a little tricky one too, as to how do you evaluate how well they're doing in terms of, in some ways that's where it being a for-profit does help, because it's kind of like, well, if they're not doing very well, they're not going to make any money, so therefore they're not going to come back. So you have to make it, if they're to make something successful, then they're gonna want to do a good job. So that's where that works out. But again, I don't know if the economics of it would work out. It depends what's offered. And so that's the nice thing about this, is that if it's kind of a general, it's kind of like I've dealt with grants like this too, where it's like, I vaguely know what I want. I don't even know if it's possible. But let's put this out there, and maybe someone will be able to creatively come up with a solution that really solves that, and maybe in ways that we didn't anticipate, but works really well. Great. I mean, that would be wonderful. So rather than having us try to figure this out, or rather having the market take that on and be that another job, that they don't have the hands, they don't have the people there to run that. So this could be a way around that. So other thoughts or ideas, or
I think it bears digestion. I think the concept is certainly a good one. You just have to. Is a presentation available for us to kind of study?
Yeah. Yep. So I send it out to Stephanie. I'll send it out to, or actually, I guess officially, Stephanie should send it out to everyone.
Right.
So then you can all see that. But it really was, within this, I've dealt with this in other organizations also, where it's like, oh, we've been wanting this thing for so long, and then you look at the rules and you find that the rules prohibit it, or don't prohibit it, but it don't explicitly encourage it, and then it falls into a gray area. So it becomes hard to know, like, could you have someone that even does this?
Mm-hmm.
And so that, if in this case being a positive of showing, like, yes, there's in fact a line item for this role, and that's something that we desire. And again, it could be, again, I did this also with the rewriting the bylaws too, is like to add in more people. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be filled. It would, if there's no one who satisfies the requirements.
Yeah.
It's like Stephanie was talking last time, we need more nut vendors. That'd be great. We just have to get. And maybe that getting this kind of RFPs, this idea of kind of pushing out a little bit of what we want, might actually help us get a little bit of that, and being specific about it. But in this case, this doesn't fall under any existing umbrella. So
Right.
it would fall to us, or to kind of start crafting some sort of an umbrella for it, so that it actually could be. We're creating a niche. We're a little ecosystem here.
I mean, we've had a little bit of experience with something similar just when we used to do like the curbside pickup during COVID. That, there was some things about that worked. There were some things that just really did not work with that. A lot of it was that like people would always be coming asking us, saying, I'm picking up such and such. And then like the market staff somehow would have to be the go-between to find the person, or we would be running the orders ourselves to people's cars. And that also there was like a designated parking area for people to be doing that, but not sure that like we could actually do that full time. But it was an interesting thing to look at. The other issue that may be is like, what is the volume of this going to be, right? Is it going to be like 50 orders? Where are they going to put them? Are they able to stagger it? You know what I mean? Like just logistically, like our volume of customers is so high. What would this even look like if it were a high demand thing? These are just some questions I have just based on our experiences with the curbside parking. Or with that, we had people like, there was a number to call when when they arrived, but they didn't know where they were in the market. Anyway, there's all these sorts of things where they were supposed to be in one designated location and they weren't in that location. But then we would still have to like make it happen anyway for them, or they didn't know the name of the vendor, or anyway. So there was a lot of logistical hurdles that I can anticipate with something like this. But yeah, some other vendors, I've heard some of the other artisans ask for something like this, or if there could be some sort of like courtesy shuttle if you have groceries. And I guess my other question is like, I don't know if the best way to go about this is another vendor per se, or if this is something that we should figure out a way like that the market could do itself. Like, I'm not sure. Because the question, like, say you're selling bags, but like, is that revenue going to the market if it's a separate vendor. Like that can get a little bit murky. And for us, what happened with that was that Parks launched a online merchandise store. So they basically were like, no, you're not gonna have your stuff in-house anymore. People just have to like scan the QR code to go to the website. And obviously when people say, oh, do you have a bag? I want to buy a bag. And we're like, scan the QR code. Like it's not the answer they're looking for. So I guess that's my other sort of thought here is like, is there a way that we could do it through the market in a way that it's not the market staff doing it, but it is still something like supported by the market? So that's just another thought I had in there.
Yeah, and that would be great. The challenge is that I know from hearing from you guys too that you have no lack of things to do and no excess hands floating around. And it has been discussed too about being like a volunteer thing or a fundraising thing. And those are ways too that could work. One of the challenges with those others is that there's a lot of training involved, there's a lot of overhead involved, and it's often inconsistent. And so if it were a feature of the market all the time, then people could rely on it. It's like, here, I can come and get my groceries for the week. I know I can because this service allows me to do that. Versus some weeks, maybe, most weeks not. Well, that doesn't serve me. The other way, too, you mentioned logistics for this, and one of the ideas that came up with some of the other systems for this, too, is like, again, there's this key problem of, two hands. I can if I bring my bags, good, I've got that. If I want to get bags, there aren't necessarily easily available bags here. The other side, though, is like, look at every grocery store. There are baskets and there are carts, and that there are little, like I often when I would walk to the market, I have a little cart that I carry behind me. It's not that is like most any urban area has a bunch of people coming around with carts all the time. And so it could be that even something like that is rented from this thing, and they'll give you out a cart. You go around, they'll take it back, they'll hold it for you while you get your car coming up. Or even other things have done it too. This is like a post-COVID thing, which is still kind of foreign to me, but it's like you just have everything delivered. It's like, okay, I'll drop off my groceries and then give you my address. And then at the end of the day, a truck comes and delivers it out and it comes to your door. And would there be people for that? I would guess so. Yeah. Not me, but are there people that would do that? Yeah. Apparently that's what a lot of people expect. So again, that's where getting out of my head as to what I do. Everyone should ride their cargo bike, and then problem solved. But that's clearly not that's what I've been saying for years, but that's not apparently right. So instead, if there are some other ways, what it would be, and I envision it being something where they might have, some stacking things so they could stack and organize and sort things and maybe have a tagging system and some other stuff for doing this. It's kind of like a code check, but a fairly elaborate code check with some transport. I don't know. And again, this is where it comes down to the financials of it too, because it could be that dealing with that, what's going to actually pay the bills for that. Let someone else work on that economic model, and it may well. The other thing too with getting it out of the market management and putting it into a third party is it kind of sidesteps on a liability issue too, because if something happens and it's dropped or lost and then the city open for liability, it's like, well, there's a separate service that's dealing with that isn't necessarily run by the city. It's a separate it's an independent person. So that might help solve some of those issues too, making it a little cleaner, a split in that way too, defining the boundary. But I'm not sure. It's a proposal, it's an idea.
I also wonder, like, if we did it through like a contract or through the market, I wonder if this would be a partnership like that Boober Tours would be interested in. They already have like a larger vehicle, especially, and obviously we would have to be like a limited radius for them. Like we're not going to make them bike 10 miles in both directions, but it could be something like that, already using a business, because we're not going to be using like DoorDash or Uber Eats or things like this.
Sure.
But to sort of like have something, but you're right, I don't think it's something that's necessarily going to be financially viable. And I do think that for it to work, it probably needs to be contracted out by the market, like as its own thing, because there's been other options, like we have some carts, we have some of like the folding, more of like the black grocery ones, but over time, those don't get brought back. They have disappeared. So we have like literally, I think, two left. Or no, we have one left. Excuse me. And I know Stephanie, she had like six originally, and that's just since like 2019 to now that all of that stuff has gone away. So I guess that's the other part of it, is like people have this problem where they're like, I'm going to my car, and then they're leaving it at their car. So like we've found stuff like down at the co-op before, or all the way down the street in the other direction, and people have been like, oh hey, I think this is the market's cart. Because people are in that grocery store mentality, like someone will come pick it up, but no, we don't currently have that. So just some other like attempts at addressing this that have happened in the past.
One way to do it too would be essentially put a deposit on it, which is the value of the cart. And if you want to walk away with it, it's all yours. If you want to, you put it in your car or leave it, whatever, up to you. If you bring it back, you get the value back. So there are some simple ways that could work to encourage people to bring it back, or not. I've often thought that it would, part of transitioning to a denser community is making more pedestrian mobility. And a major part of pedestrian mobility is backpacks, bicycles, and carts. And that if you, again, live in an urban environment, that's how you get around a lot. And that City of Ann Arbor is densifying, and that has a lot of positive things. But one of the negatives is that people who are used to driving everywhere and parking a foot away from the door of everywhere they want to go, just, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen less and less too. So I think there are ways to reduce our carbon footprint, ways to provide a healthier environment, and part of it is with human power. And so figuring out ways to encourage, and and again, the market could be a nexus for that too, and that would be a way to kind of get that going forward. So.
And this is not really that serious, because that model didn't really work. But for a minute there were these little self-driving little delivery things in Carytown, that obviously always had somebody on either a Segway or scooter accompanying them. But who knows? Maybe OSI is going to build us a solar-powered bot that will drive people's deliveries to their cars. You never know. Maybe this is something that can be.
Sure, it's going to happen, and it probably is going to happen pretty soon. But exactly when, I don't know. But in the
I just think
meantime,
I just think it's interesting that there was two like competing ones of those in the city, and now there's zero. So like they clearly weren't that functional, or there was something
ahead
missing.
of their time. They're a little too early.
So
we're a forward-thinking community. This is what happens.
Right.
This is the beauty of Ann Arbor.
Right.
I think Stephanie's idea of potentially partnering with Uber or the other organizations that's out there could be interesting for deliveries. The other thing I was thinking about when I have, so many apples and trying to carry a bunch of things, every once in a while I just think, is there a place where I could put this and then have a designated parking space along Detroit Street where I could pull up and pick things up, which is sort of building on some of what was happening online during COVID. So that doesn't decrease our carbon footprints, but it would make it logistically easier for those times a year when people are buying large bulk of things to be able, so it's more like my bag check at the hotel or something like that, where it's just like, let me just drop this off and you take care of it. And then, but that would take a designated parking space too. But I could see that being appealing to a lot of people too, that might simplify whole getting to vehicles and things like that. So just an alternative idea of doing things. Might also, I mean, Argus is doing deliveries. It might be interesting to talk to them to just see how much of their business that is, because I know that demand went way down after COVID, but it's still there and they're still making it work. So just another idea.
Yeah, the one downside of the parking space, and this is something we saw during COVID, is like the designated parking spaces invited a lot of bad behavior of people just parking their car, leaving it. So that ended up having to be another thing market staff had to do, whereas like, I'm sorry, you can't park here. This is like a 5 minute only thingy. So I think it would take a little bit more support also from the city to change signage in that area too, because yeah, they're not reading our sign like this is curbside for the market only, and it got pretty hairy just because of people are just so desperate for parking in the area, they'll just take any spot they think is available. So
Are any of those spots designated handicapped?
no,
Okay.
but that has also been asked over the years, like why not?
Because that could be an option too for if there were another vendor that vendor location was specifically located, strategically co-located with a parking spot or a loading zone, such that they would be the ones that also are managing that. So if someone does try to come and be like, sorry, you can't be here. This is the loading zone for this market thing, and so that there's someone always there. That would be just to receive orders and also to load stuff up too. So that would be a function. Also, kind of related too is that like we're talking about canning and freezing, that when one buys 50 pounds of asparagus, for example, then that's awfully hard to haul in a few blocks. Even I can do it in my cargo bike, but it's not. So how would you actually facilitate that? And again, part of the goal here is trying to get people to eat more local food. How do you get them to? And sometimes it's like, hey, the price is right, the quality is fantastic. This is something I really, really want, but I have a plastic bag.
Yeah.
It's all I can buy. And it's like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, the other question I have about this is I know that May Mobility has partnered with U of M and they have these like shuttles that are always circling. And honestly, I haven't seen them recently because I think the construction project made it hard for them to idle in their preferred spot. But we were in a video that they did for promo on it. Like there should be some way that we could have something like that, which is supposed to be a free shuttle in the area. Why we can't like maybe expand that partnership too of something that already exists, it's already coming by, but maybe a ride to your car with your stuff in the autonomous electric vehicle might be another option.
Yeah, and I think so I'm hearing kind of two different paths then, that one of them is the kind of a separate independent entity, the other is a partnership. Both could be fine, if let's say with May or with Uber Tours or something like that as a partnership of some sort, something established versus something that's kind of that's where there's more specification of what it is and how they do it versus the other one where there's more, it's less hands-on, where it's more just like, here's the spot, make it happen.
Yeah.
And pros and cons to both. I can see they either could work. It depends, again, partially economics, but again, I'm not the target audience for that. So that's I'm always hesitant to opine too much on that because it's like but I know people do. So
yeah, and like from my perspective, it would be very preferable to have it be a partnership through the market. That way we have them there regularly. It's not some vendor like the knife sharpener who are like really excited that comes and then like you never see them again and everyone's like, where's that service? Where's that service? And then true example, not theoretical. And that way it also gives us more oversight of the process, because that's the other thing. Everyone participating in this is going to be asking us questions as staff, needing guidance. So the more we know and are involved at whatever peripheral level, I think the better it's going to be for the functionality of such a program. But that's just my thoughts on that.
your point about the knife sharpener is really important, because if it is something that ends up like, yeah, I'm there 3 days a year,
Yeah.
that's not going to serve. So it could be that potentially could be part of the rules writing of it is like, hey, you are accepted. Here's your contract, the RFP. It kind of is like, we need you to be here 80% of the time or whatever, something. And that would the same thing with a partnership too, because if they're like, yeah, I stop by sometimes, I'm like, it's not
Yeah.
cutting it. So in either way, it's kind of fleshing out kind of what we want and some thinking about, I guess there's a question of what do we want. Two is where, if it is, let's say, if there is a parking spot or loading zone that's feasible even for this and for with all the construction too, because that's something else that's going to change things. But start thinking through about that and then it may well be too that sending out to the farmers, to the people or the vendors who are already at the market, both requests for ideas and see if there are people who are potentially interested in that, because that's a known audience, a much more known audience. And so, and they also know the rhythm of the market better than someone who's just randomly coming in. So that that could be a possible group too, at least even just to get ideas and feedback too. But
Sure. Does anyone have any last thoughts for now? I mean, we of course can continue this conversation into future meetings, but I think this has been a fruitful conversation thus far.
yeah, so if you could send out the proposal, and then we can discuss more a little bit. And if you, when people get a chance to read through the document, get a sense of where it is. And again, it's a proposal. It's not, there's nothing is set in stone by any means. But when I make a proposal, I try to be as concrete as I possibly can, so as to give some idea of what that could look like. But don't take that as it's baked and done. It's far from it. Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. All right. Great. Any other last things on this?
So I just want to ask again about the PMAC bylaws, since it's been, I think, more than a year that it's been rolling around in the city, and just again, would be lovely to have that move forward. I think we're moving to a place where it would also be lovely to have more voices on PMAX, since we put in that proposal to have two more people, and just for conversations like this, it would be really nice to have more voices, and the conversations about the re-envisioning the market. I think we need more voices.
Well, I have some good news. It is going to first reading on January 6th council meeting. So there you go. And Chris Frost gives his apologies. He has been pulled in many different directions, and this just kept getting away from him. But he has drafted the language. It is ready to go. I saw the email chain that Milton's assistant has confirmed it will be going to the January 6th agenda for council.
Just to
Great.
clarify, what does first reading mean?
Honestly, it's just a formality. I'm pretty sure at this point for us, but usually it's just the first reading. If there's any feedback, they synthesize that, go back, present it again, et cetera, et cetera. But I think for us, we don't really need to do that. It's not controversial. The ordinance is going to be tweaked a bit, but that's all above board with the, legal team. So we're pretty much ready to go as far as I know.
Thank you.
Yes. Alrighty. Right.
Third, do business people have?
Any other new business?
No, I'm not sure if it's new business, but with Adam coming back in early January, should we be thinking about having another in-person meeting for him to visit with us, maybe February, to give him enough time to get his feet back under him?
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
If we could put that in the notes so we can plan for that, I think that's a really good idea.
Me too.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else? All right, great. So we are moving on to second public comment. So if there's any member of the public that would like to participate, please press *9 on your phone to virtually raise your hand. And I'm seeing a hand raised. All right, go ahead and unmute and tell us your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Debbie Marks. Surprise! And I'm a vendor at the Ann Arbor Farmers Market. I have been for 34 years, and I live in Ann Arbor. I just want to thank everybody in the commission for donating your time and your effort and caring about the market. It's everything, and we appreciate you guys. I would like to especially thank Peter for his great idea. I like you thinking outside the box. I think this is something we could all kind of sit down and work with, maybe some customers as well. I would like to see more help taking merchandise to people's car. That way they don't have to park twice. It would eliminate that whole second step if that were possible. I know Hannah's going to be gone after Saturday. She's got her time
Next
off,
Saturday.
and I want her.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Goody, we get an extra week. Oh, thank you for clarifying that. And I just wanted her to know that she'll be missed, and we all appreciate her so much. But we appreciate all you guys. I really want to say that again. I know there's not hundreds of people listening, but hopefully there's a dozen people listening, and we care very, very much. Thank you all very much, and happy holidays, and see you at the market.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank
See you
you.
Saturday.
Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Great. Are there any other public comments? I'm not seeing any.
All right. So seeing no further public comment, we'll move to adjourn. It's 6:52 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for being here, Hannah.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll see you at a very frigid last market before Christmas on Saturday.
Oh,
It should still be quite a large market. We have over 50 people signed up, even with the weather forecast as of right now. So, with that said, have a great night, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
at the market.
See you at the market.
All right.
Bye.